On this episode of Cinema Disaster, we're going to be talking about the 1988 film Killer Klowns from Outer Space. It was written by Charles and Stephen Chiodo, and it was directed by Stephen Chiodo. The Chiodo brothers are a special effects team who you might know from their work on Critters or Team America World Police, Mel Brooks's film History of the World Part 1, and probably most famously, you know them as doing the, I guess it's like, I don't know if it's claymation or stop motion or whatnot. They did the large Marge sequence in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. This was the Chiodo brothers' first film. The original name of the movie was Killer Klowns, but they didn't want people thinking that it was a slasher film, so they changed it to Killer Klowns from Outer Space. This whole film is definitely an homage to a lot of the films that they grew up watching. Ray Harryhausen movies, The Blob, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you name it. This whole film was shot in 36 days, and they were on a very tight schedule because they only had $1.8 million to shoot it. And I know that probably sounds like a lot to everyone watching, but in the movie industry, that's considered very low budget. So they had to get creative with a lot of the effects that they used, and obviously time is money. So the faster they shoot the film, the less money it's going to cost. This whole film it's science fiction mixed with horror and comedy. The idea for this film came from many conversations that the Chiodo brothers had about what would be the scariest thing that you can think of. And I think it was Stephen Chiodo said, if you were driving down a dark road at night and you looked next to you and there was a clown peering at you from the car next to you. And so they just totally built off of that entire idea. And they made, when I saw this film for the first time, which was sometime in the 80s, I know, I caught it on TV. I caught it about maybe 20 minutes in. It was the scene at Big Top Burger when you have the clown trying to lure the kid out of the restaurant. So basically he could kill her. And at that time, I found this movie, it was extremely creepy and disturbing and very, very terrifying. And I had no idea what I was watching. So I looked it up in the TV guide, and it said Killer Klowns from Outer Space. And I still remember their description of it was campy sci-fi spoof about bozos from beyond, which, I don't know, all the old TV guide descriptions didn't do justice or didn't do very well for describing what film you were watching. But as terrifying as it was to me back then, and as disturbing and creepy as that it was, I couldn't stop watching it. And it got to where every time that it came on TV, I had to watch it. And I remember telling my friend Brian when we were in junior high, you got to see this film, Killer Klowns from Outer Space. It's scary as fuck. And I remember him not believing me. He was like, no way. He's like, clowns are supposed to be fun. How can something fun be scary? So I sat him down and I made him watch the movie. And in the middle of it, he looked at me and he was like, dude, you were right. Something that is supposed to be fun can be scary. So, the plot of the film is basically, it's the movie The Blob. It's the premise for The Blob with killer clowns. The clowns are actually aliens, which they're not really clowns at all. They're aliens that resemble clowns, and it's even said in the film that that could be where our idea of clowns come from. That maybe they came to Earth millions of years ago, and people saw these things, and then that's where our whole concept of clowns comes from. But the plot is it starts off on Lover's Lane, and you have Debbie, who's played by Susan Schneider, and then you have Mike, who's played by Grant Kramer. They're on Lover's Lane making out or whatever, and then they see this comet shoot overhead, which is an homage to the Blob. And if you notice, like in all these old, especially 50s films, if a comet comes, if you spot a comet coming to Earth, nothing good ever follows that. It's always something bad. So, so these clowns come to Earth, and their spaceship looks like a circus tent. And there's a character in the movie by the name of what the hell was his name? It was played by Royal Dano. Farmer Gene Green. He goes out and he finds this circus tent in the middle of the woods, and he approaches it and tries to find out what it is. And like, if I'm out there if I'm out in the middle of the woods at night and I just find this circus tent for no fucking reason, there's no way that I'm sticking around. I'm getting the fuck out. But he pays the ultimate price for his curiosity. Curiosity killed the cat, I guess, is the old saying. But basically, so what they do, I guess, is they come here. I guess they came here to eat, because they turn. It's almost like a spider. They turn these people into cotton candy cocoons, and while you're in the cocoon, it dissolves your body into like a liquefied form where they can then drink your liquid remains. They have these like crazy straws that they stick into it, and they can drink like the fluids out of it. So I mean, this whole movie is like a monster takeover film. It's a throwback to the old monster invasions movies. Just like I talked about in my Gremlins review. This is another one of those that's where the clowns are taking over. And I want to talk about, the special effects in this film are absolutely incredible. They once again, it's all practical, like me and Sam talked about with Dick Tracy and the Ghostbusters. They have like these really great matte paintings, and the whole overall design of the inside of the spaceship is very surrealistic and almost, I'd say, kind of nightmarish, and almost something that you would see out of a dream. Inside the spaceship, there's this power chamber, which is an homage to the Krell machine in the movie Forbidden Planet. The tagline on the DVD, where it says, "In space, no one can eat ice cream," is an homage to in Alien, the tagline, in space, no one can hear you scream. I would highly suggest this movie to anyone. I mean, if you're afraid of clowns, you're probably going to be highly disturbed by this, but I still think it's something you need to see once. Some people are going to like this, some people aren't. I've showed it to many people, and I've seen it so many times now, because it's like one of my favorite films, that it doesn't even faze me anymore. It just seems normal, and I find it a fun film, but I always forget about the first reaction I had when I saw it, of being creeped out and disturbed. So, some people I show it to kind of, when I'm done showing it to them, they just sort of have this look on their face like, what the fuck did I just watch? So there's a lot of great scenes in this film. There's this great scene with like a shadow puppet scene. You got this clown. I think he's against like this brick wall, this bus stop. He's doing various shadow puppets on the wall. There's like a rabbit, and then there's like Washington crossing the Delaware, and then all of a sudden it's like this giant, like I think it's like a T-Rex, and the shadow like leans over and actually like eats all the people on the sidewalk. There's another cool scene um, where they throw all these pies at a security guard, and I guess the pies are like acidic because they completely bury him in these like cream pies or whatnot, and they put a cherry on top, and then you can see like skeletal remains, like it's his arm. You can see like a skeletal remains of his arm hanging out. There's a great music score in this film, done by a guy by the name of John Massari, and I think like the music he did for this was it absolutely serves the film in the most perfect way possible. You know, whereas certain scenes he goes for a more comedic style of music, whereas other films he goes for a more serious. And I would say that a lot of the music that he chose is very sinister sounding. It's dark, creepy. You know, it has this circus type quality to it. And I know John Massari said he wanted to do kind of like a 50s style score in the vein of like old 50s horror or sci-fi films. And then we got the Dickies, who's you know, an old punk band from California. They do the theme song for the opening credits. They do the song called "Killer Klowns from Outer Space." There's so many good actors in this movie, like genre actors that you might know. Like I said, Susan Snyder, who plays Debbie, who you might know from Weird Science, Night of the Creeps, The Last Starfighter, Return of the Living Dead 2. And you have Royal Dano as Farmer Green, who was in Something Wicked This Way Comes, The Ghoulies 2, Space Invaders. He was on the TV show, the first TV show that David Lynch did, what, Twin Peaks, and then his final film was The Dark Half. And then you have John Allen Nelson, who was in the movie Hunk. Then you have Grant Kramer, and he was in the movie New Year's Evil. And then you have veteran actor John Vernon, who plays Sergeant Mooney, and he was in the film Animal House, Airplane 2, Ernest Goes to Camp, Fraternity Vacation. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And once again, as I talked about with in a lot of my other reviews about dynamics between the characters, there's an interesting dynamic between John Allen Nelson's character and Grant Kramer, his character of Mike, and then Susan Snyder's character of Debbie, because John Allen Nelson is a police officer in this movie that Debbie and Mike go and tell, because they witness these clowns murdering people. So, you know, it's the old story, you know, like that you see in every, you know, horror film. You know, you got the two people that know or whoever, and then they go to the police and they tell them the story, and nobody believes them. You know, you know, John Allen Nelson's character completely, he thinks that they're trying to pull a prank on the police department. And another thing is that John Allen Nelson's character does not like Grant Kramer's character, because Grant Kramer, or Mike, is dating Debbie, and Debbie is John Allen Nelson's character's ex-girlfriend. So you sort of have that, you know, that jealousy You know, because he's still, I guess, is in love with Debbie, and he's jealous of Mike. So you've got that whole thing going on, and then you got John Vernon, who keeps getting these phone calls from the public about killer clowns, and he thinks that the town's trying to pull one over on him and make a fool out of him. As a matter of fact, he says one of his lines in the film is, "You're not going to make a dummy out of me," which is sort of foreshadowing for another really great scene, or a really creepy one too, where this clown comes into the jail, and he kills Mooney and turns him into like a ventriloquist dummy. So you know you've got like this blood coming out of his mouth that kind of makes lines on his face that looks like the lines that are on a ventriloquist dummy's mouth. And then he's got two bloody thumbprints on his cheeks, so it makes his cheeks look rosy. And obviously Mooney's really pale, I guess now that he's dead. And the clown has his hand like in the back of his head so he can like work his mouth like a puppet. And when John Allen Nelson comes back to the police station, he sees this clown and Mooney sitting there, and the clown like sort of like talks. Yeah, they don't talk otherwise, you know. He talks through Mooney's character, and I remember he tells Dave, which is John Allen Nelson's character. He tells Dave, "Don't worry, Dave. All we want to do is kill you." And another interesting thing in this, which is sort of a throwback to zombie films, like in zombie films, the only way to kill him is if you shoot him in the head, you destroy the brain. Well, in this movie, you have to shoot the clowns in the nose, and if you do that, then you know that's their only vulnerable spot. Another little known fact about this movie is that a lot of the clown masks were reused for the movie Ernest Scared Stupid. They just repainted them to make them look like trolls. The Kiddo brothers have talked about doing a sequel to this film for, oh my gosh, like since the 80s. And it's years and years and years. And even a couple of years ago, they were talking about possibly getting a sequel off the ground again. But here we are, like a couple of years later, and I've still heard nothing. I even heard that they were going to maybe make like for the Sci-Fi Channel, they were going to make a sequel of it, like a made-for-TV movie to appear on Sci-Fi Network, and I've never heard of that. So I don't know if that project's dead. You know, I'll probably be dead before there's a Killer Clowns from Outer Space sequel. But, you know, time will tell. Who knows whether that'll happen or not. And if it does, you know, who knows whether it will be good. I mean, I hope. Because the first one, I think, is an absolute masterpiece. And it's a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously. And, you know, it knows that it's campy. It knows that it's a spoof on all these old sci-fi horror films. But at the same time, it has serious moments and a very sinister, creepy undertone to this film. So, if you want to see something that is funny and bizarre and probably like no other film you've ever seen before, and something that will definitely probably disturb you to some degree if you're afraid of clowns, but maybe first time you watch it, who knows. But anyway, check out Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and until next time, keep watching.